Okay, so if I want to braze this together, I have to get all the paint off, and it's been painted, it's ancient, multiple layers. And what I did, yeah, old painter trick, I soaked it for like 24 hours in this stuff. Let's see. This stuff. Methyl ethyl ketone. Got to be careful with it. It's not really good. You just got to be cautious. It's flammable and it's toxic as all get out. But you can see, if I go back down to the part at hand, the paint didn't all wrinkle up like you would expect with paint remover. So people don't think it works, but it works a different way. It takes all of the organic solvents out of the paint and leaves the pigment, pretty much, you know. So watch, you get on the edge of it where it's real thick. You get it going, you can start to just peel it off. See, it'll scrape right off of there. So once you get it started, a lot of times, let's see, there you go, you get a bigger piece. It all depends on how thick the paint is, but you can tell how soft it is. And so all you really got to do is go around and get a large piece, kind of like a border. See if we can get it to do this. So we got a piece of the paint that's no longer hard. And it'll just peel right off. See there? Just like that. So that's part of restoring stuff, is getting the paint and the coatings off without damaging the metal. And I mean by not putting any kind of scratches that are not already there. And if you sand it, even with a wire wheel, it'll buff off the surface of the castings, you know. So I'm gonna get this stuff all off, and then I'm gonna go and just give it a light sandblasting. The inside's where it's gonna shine, because you can't get to the inside of a curve to get paint out good. You ever see anybody do that with 50-year-old paint? Some people have. Doing pretty good. Like I said, this is the part that I hate to clean, because it's an inside curve and it's just miserable to clean. See, it's stuck a little better over here. It's a little rough for casting, I can see that. Come on, baby. Don't beat that away. Looks like this thing is dipped in something real viscous. The other thing about these old paints, if you're buffing and sanding them, you're creating some potentially hazardous dust, you know. So I want to do that. I'm trying to get this guy past that rough patch of casting. And there's patience aspect. You could easily tear it, so you just put a little pressure and wait. There it is. Anyway, that's my method for getting the paint off. Okay, so I've got it as clean as I can get it. And you can see 4 screws sticking out because I went and digging in my scrap pile, and by sheer luck I had this old drop from, you know, I used to punch these out with a computer controlled plasma cutter all day long, you know, so I had a bunch of these drops. And it was close enough that I could drill this at 1024, these 4 spots, and clearance drill here and bolt it together. That holds it together. So let me zoom it in real close like. So you can see the crack comes right where it broke in half, comes up around here, right? Across here. Comes up right close to this hub. Let's see. Yeah, I can see it. So the crack comes along here, and then here's the trick. It comes down here and stops and makes almost a 90-degree turn this way for about a 1/16 of an inch, and then it proceeds along here. And what happened, the crack was trying to go, but this gets thicker and thicker. So it followed around this corner. So it went this way, it was coming this way in a curve. Finally got thin enough, it shattered and went this way around the corner and all the way to the other end. But here's the kicker. If there's a corner right there, there has to be a crack right there on one of these 2 pieces going off to the side. I doubt if it's this one because this stuff is solid, it's piece, but this starts getting thin right here and goes down to there. So I'm thinking there's either a crack going this way or this way, something like that, but I can't see it. And I went and checked, and I have some spray, but it's canceled, it doesn't work. But in the meantime, while I'm looking for some dye, I've got to grind this guy out, the carbide burr, and make a little groove as close to the other side as I can get, all the way along this crack from edge to edge, so I can fill it with the filler rod, the brass filler rod. Yikes. As an aside, this little guy is kind of small. See, it's real thin up in here. And it's all going to get hot real quick. That's really cool. It makes it easier to control it while I'm brazing it. But you got to remember that the melting point of the brass filler rod is probably 1750 to 1850, somewhere right there, Fahrenheit. And cast iron, if memory serves, is right at 2000 to 21 or 2, somewhere around there, depending on where you're at. So I've got a 200 degrees, 200 to 300 degrees latitude that I can melt this thin cast iron if I get it too hot, because this is a nice big web and it's going to collect heat. So I'll have to be careful. Yahoo! Next up, deburring. Okay, so This thing is all the way right to the edge. You can see right there that I hit one of the low spots in the casting. So down there, it's almost impossible to see. There's a crack that goes from here, goes kind of like this, and peters out. So the last thing I'm gonna do is drill a hole right here before I do the brazing. But then I show the rest of this thing. It's got a nice deep fillet right to the edge. And it's pretty clean. Okay guys, from the Creative Solutions or the Dirty Tricks file. This is stuff I learned a long time ago. I had like a quarter of a bottle left of the 2-part silicone casting molding stuff that was left over, and it doesn't last long in a bottle after you open it. Here in the desert it lasts longer than just about anywhere else because it's so dry here, but humidity is a factor. Anyway, since I'm restoring this little stand for a cake decorating unit, I'm making an impression with the leftover silicone of the good side. So I'll have the texture of the surface in there. And then on the other side, what I can do is use that as like a rubber stamp to put a similar texture over the brass that after I get done brazing it. Essentially disappearing the seam line in the paint. Does that make sense? Yeah. It can be used for dirty tricks. Absolutely. People that don't want you to know. So if you see anything unusual, go with a pick and see how much Bondo's in there. That's the trick to check, if somebody does that kind of stuff. How thick's the coating? But ultimately, this fix is going to be structurally perfectly sound. It's just aesthetically, since it's in a place where they're making cakes, we're trying to make it look as perfect as we can and as smooth as we can for cleaning purposes. So yeah. Another trick. Old man tricks, right? So alrighty then. The little cake stand is sitting on a hot plate with an old aluminum pressure cooker pan on top of it. It's reading at the top 230 degrees, 213, 190, 208. Okay, so the higher up, the hotter it gets. I can get away with this on this little part because it fits on the hot plate. And putting a can over it makes the air around it always be almost the same temperature. And so it slowly raises the temperature of the entire piece up. It's like being in an oven. So my target is over 500. So I've got, I don't know if anybody hasn't heard of these, but where am I? Right here. Temp stick. This is a 300 degree one. I have another one over here. 500 degree one. And it's like a piece of wax that melts at a specific temperature. So I'm going to pop this cover off and check it right now. It's been 33 minutes under the heat. Let's see where it's at. I want it at 500 or above. It's kind of like a magic number for me, at least. Let's see. Take the pan off. Let's try this guy. It's in 431 right here. About 400, 370. So let's try. If I use the 300 temp stick, let me see. I'm going to zoom it in so you can get a look at this in case you've never seen it. All right. So here's a a 300 degree one. Watch this. Look, see, it just melted immediately. Smoke's off. That means it's over 300 degrees. So I'll let it smoke off a little bit. I'll try this. This is the 500 one. See, it doesn't do anything. No marks. That means this thing is under 500 degrees. So I know it's around 400. Put her back to bake a while longer, and I'll get back and check it again. Well, that's a nice picture. So then, when I'm ready, I'm going to set that guy right here, and I'm going to braise it right here. Keep it up off the ground, and I won't be getting anything around it too hot. Stand by. Okay, it's been another 20 minutes or so, 30, maybe a full hour since I started. See, notice it's a different color. Let's see, 500. Oh yeah, it's right there around here. It's almost there up here. Notice how it melts? If I rub it, it melts. That means it's 500 or greater. All right. So I'm going to stop the camera. I'm going to set up and braise. Alrighty. So, oh yeah. That thing is like way too hot to grab with just anything. It'll burn a pair of welding gloves like quick. See if this fits in here. Very good. Alright. Turn off the hot plate, unplug it. Get my glasses. Alrighty, one more thing to check. Zoom this guy in. Try real hard not to be getting in the way. All right, I'm out of time. It's gonna be cooling off. All right. Put the hose under the bench so it won't swing out and hit that guy. So I'm going to heat it up a little bit. Still getting set up. All right. If you watch my technique here, you're going to notice that I move the tip to the side real quick. That's because I'm balancing this pool of brass that's molten, and it's real close to the melting point of the cast. So the cast, it'll get orange and red, or it'll get it red and it'll get orange, and then it starts to get yellow. It's about to melt. So right there is when I flick out of the way, and instantly it'll cool down enough to solidify, and I go by it more, and you just dab at it and slowly fill that gullet with the filler rod. Piece of cake, man. You gotta try and fill it real good from the beginning, except for maybe on the corners on the ends, because that I'm gonna have to come back later and touch it up because it's got a clamp there. This is where that second crack was. It's a big open area. Let me tell you, it's hard trying to do this with a camera in the way. While it's hot, I go back the other way and make sure I've got it filled up to the very edge of that chamfer I made, that fillet. That's pretty good. Back over here. So now we're leaving the area. I'm going to pull it up this hill so it doesn't run downhill on me. You can see if it pulls away from one corner that it needs to be hotter there. I think I mentioned earlier, the brass pretty much melts at about 1800. And the steel, 22. So there's a very fine line in there. Now I can try to build this corner up. Turn it down a little more. The thing is so nice and hot right now, I can work it pretty good. Let's see if this is hot enough. Yeah, it's a pretty thing. See, I can see the corners where I'm filling up that groove. So I have a really hot, I had a pretty hot working my way across here so that I could basically melt the entire mass and flow it downhill into this groove. So fill up the bottom, and now I'm going back across, and with the torch I'm exposing where there's flux. See, like right here there's a corner that got taken out. There it is. So I got to fill this guy in. See, there's a low spot right here in this gully. Of course, my nose start running while I'm brazing, so I'm fucking dribbling. Need a little more volume. Get a look here. What we got? Yep, there's a hole. Thought I might make it with one stick. All right. So that's the end of this stage. And I want it to slowly cool, very slowly. So I'm going to carefully set this guy on there that's still pretty friggin' hot to keep my blanket off of it. Just like that. So it'll stay just like that until it's cold, dead cold. And that way it de-stresses completely. Well, not completely, to be honest with you, it doesn't. I could bake it up to 500 again and let it cool off and it would de-stress, but right now I just want the whole thing to cool off real slow so it doesn't form any cracks any worse than it's already got. Yep. How long did that take? 13 minutes, huh? So the brazing came out perfect the first time on the top. I couldn't be happier. Chipped it off and it was all filled in. Perfect. The bottom, after this picture, I had to go back and redo the corners and the holes you see underneath. So then I went after with a flap disc on a little air die grinder and contoured it, but it was really smooth. You know, you could, you know, see pits and stuff. So I gave it a little bit of filler with some like body putty, and voila, perfect. Okay, so here's the finished product. Let's take a closer look. See, now I gotta turn it around. This is the side that was broken. This is automotive primer with dusty fingerprints on it. Notice how it's got a similar texture to the unbroken side. It's because of this thing, that little silicone rubber stamp I made. I put the primer on there, let it kind of dry up a little bit. Oh yeah. Universal mold release. I spray that on that little stamp. Take a shot of beer. And I stamped a similar texture around this guy. See, I did not do it on the inside. So you can see there's some little voids in the back of the weld. The crack goes across here. Now that crack is about 50 thousandths deep before it hits the brass. Yep,